All right guys, in this video we are going to talk about knee pain with squatting. This is a super common thing that we run into with a ton of patients. A lot of people are into strength training, or they're just trying to supplement their endurance training with some strength training. So squatting should always be a part of any kind of strength program. We believe that. We try to preach that to all of our patients. But a lot of people are like, well, I can't squat, my knees hurt when I do. So that does not have to be the case. We're gonna teach you guys how to get rid of that knee pain with squatting and get you back to squatting on a regular basis, because it's super important, right? Whether you want to or not, you're gonna be doing squatting in your life. Every time you go to the bathroom, every time you pick something up from the ground, picking up your little grandkids, whatever it is, you have to be able to squat. So we're gonna teach you guys how to be able to do that without knee pain. So the first step to getting rid of knee pain with squatting, where a lot of people, this is a lot of people's issue. Well, let me say it's one of two things. So first reason, or it could be a combination of the two. First reason is typically a lot of quad and or glute weakness. Okay, so if your quads and your glutes are not firing really well and efficiently, then what happens is when you run or when you squat or when you do all your daily activities, all of that pressure and stress goes directly into your knee joint. And that shouldn't be the case, right? Your big muscle groups here should help take some pressure off and activate while you're squatting so that your knees and your knee joints are not taking all of the stress, okay? So quad and or glute weakness is the first reason. And second reason is sometimes just some sensitivity to the knee bending forward over the toes. It used to be the old way of thinking that when you squat, you shouldn't let your knees go over your toes. Like, don't ever let your knees go over your toes. That's terrible. Don't do that, right? That's been disproven in research multiple times, and it's just not accurate, right? When you squat, your knees have to go over your toes if you're having good, accurate squat form. That just needs to happen in order to do it well. So what happens is people get this sensitivity to their knee bending into that full range of motion and their knee bending forward specifically. Because when you bring your knee forward over your toes, that does put a lot of stress on your knees. But again, if your quads are activating, if your glutes are activating, and if your knees are not sensitive to that motion, then you shouldn't have an issue, okay? So those are the two reasons why a lot of people have knee pain, and we're gonna cover all of those and how to help get rid of them. So for quad and glute isolation, I'm gonna show you guys our two favorite exercises for that, and then we'll show you a couple different exercises for how to start getting your knees over your toes in a pain-free way. Okay, so first one is quad we're gonna do first, is our straight leg raise. So this is super basic, but a super, super good exercise to really work your quad in isolation for a long period of time. So it's also like muscular endurance because your quad has to stay active for that whole time. So what you're gonna do is lay down. You're gonna get your opposite leg bent to like 90 degrees. This is gonna be your target. Okay, so then what you wanna do in this straight leg raise is start by literally squeezing your quad as hard as you can. I don't know if you can see the difference between relaxed and then squeezed. And you wanna keep your knee as straight as you possibly can. So you wanna think, push my knee as straight as I can, squeeze that quad really, really hard, and then you're slowly gonna lift it just to the height of your other knee here. You don't wanna go too high because then at that point you're just kind of like A, using momentum, or B, using your hip flexor to cheat. We really wanna focus on the quad here. So you're just gonna go to that height. So squeeze the quad as hard as you can, hold it, nice and slow and controlled, get to that opposite knee, and then slowly down without letting that knee bend. Two areas where people will typically cheat here is right at the top when they go to transition from going up to going down, it'll bend a little bit and then they'll kind of get there. As soon as your knee bends, you lose that quad activation. So you want to keep that knee straight the whole time. And then the second time where people will cheat is right at the bottom here when they're going to come down. They're like, okay, that's good enough, right? You don't want to do that. You want to almost think about reaching your calf to the ground first before your heel, and that will prevent you from cheating right at the end there. So you can go like 2 to 3 sets of 10 here on each side. By the end of that, you should feel that really good quad fatigue. Another thing we'll typically get people to do during these that helps just kind of teach your quad how to turn on a little bit better is at the end of each rep, so you're kind of squeeze, right, up, down. At the end here, kind of completely relax the quad and then squeeze it again at the start of each rep. So that you're kind of like making that quad come on board with each rep as opposed to just keeping it contracted the entire time. So give those a try for that quad activation. And then next one we're gonna talk about is the clamshell. Super common exercise for glute isolation. But we're a little picky on how we like it done. So this is my favorite way to teach it. So side lying all the way down. You want to get your body pretty straight. So straight line from your knee all the way up to your shoulder. Okay, so instead of being all curled up like this, I want you guys to try it this way. Feet stay together, and then what you're going to do is just open that top knee up towards the ceiling. You should feel that top butt cheek really activate a lot right there. So what we typically have people do at first is just hold this and hold it for like 10 to 20 seconds maybe until you feel that butt cheek starting to get a little bit tired. Then bring it down and then just go up and down about 20 times, just like this. And you want to think about actually like pulling the knee up from your butt cheek. Like think about doing that, and it will help get that mind-muscle connection a little bit better to the butt cheek, which is where we're trying to focus this. If this feels pretty easy by the end of like 20, then what you can do is just add a little band around your knees, just like this, and do the same thing. Now you just have a little bit of resistance. Okay, so that's our favorite glute isolation. There's obviously a million different ways to do both of those things, but those are just two of the ones that we like to use a lot here at Mission Move. Now, oops, I keep losing this. Now let's talk about knees over toes. So like I was saying before, it's just a really common thing to be afraid of moving your knees over your toes, and we don't want you guys to be that way, because when you do a good squat, look at how far my knees are over my toes, right? Like it has to happen, okay? So the first one that we'll typically have people start with, well, we have two different ones that I'm gonna show you. This is one, so you're just gonna kind of stay against the wall nice and tall, and then what you're gonna do is bring your heels back a little bit more than you normally would, and then just literally slide down the wall and just push your knees forward as much as you can tolerate, and then come back up. Okay, you don't have to go super low with this. Just kind of go as low as you feel comfortable and come up. And keep in mind, when you first start going knees over toes like this, it probably will be a little bit uncomfortable, especially if you haven't done it before, you're not used to it. So just be prepared for that. It's gonna be a little bit intense. But I always say, like, as long as it's not worse after or like into the next day, then you're golden, right? So that's what you wanna think about. Just kind of like a little discomfort while you're doing it is fine, but we don't want it to be so bad that like it's preventing you from exercising into the next day, okay? So just keep that in mind. And if that does happen, then just do a little less of it or go a little less low, right? No reason that you need to stop it completely. And then let me show you the other one. This is just kind of a classic knees over toes stretch. So you're just gonna put your foot up on like any kind of piece of furniture, an ottoman, a couch, table, whatever you got. And then you're gonna get into this like little mini lunge stance. And all you're gonna do is take your knee and just push it over your toe as far as you can. I can go pretty far. You don't have to necessarily go that far. The ultimate goal though would be to try to get your calf and your hamstring to touch, right? So you're just kind of going back and forth. And don't hold it for too long, because like I said, it will be a little irritating if you're not used to this. So just the act of going in and out really, really helps. Okay, so that would be like step one with dealing with knee pain with squatting, okay? Quad isolation, glute isolation, and starting to get that knees over toes. Step one, okay? Step two is gonna be actually starting to squat, but in a controlled manner, right? So I'll typically have people start squatting to a target. This is a target I'll usually have people start with, just depending on like how tall you are and how low that is for you. And then we'll transition to a lower target, right? Because eventually the goal would be to get rid of the target altogether. So squat to a target. The point of this is to keep it controlled. So force you to not just like plop to the bottom, because a lot of times when people squat, they just have no control and they just like completely lose everything and just are pretty floppy. So squatting to a target will help you control that, and then it also just keeps everything consistent. A lot of times when you see people squatting, like they start off pretty low and then they start getting tired and then they're just like doing this, right? And they're not really getting that depth. So consistency and control are why I like to start with the squat to target. So what you're gonna do is just get into your normal squat stance. I always tell people there's not one perfect squat stance, right? Like it depends on your body, depends on your hips, what feels comfortable for you. But I'll typically have people start about shoulder width apart, toes out, and then you're always gonna think about contracting your core and kind of like getting that slight little tilt. And then from there, you're just gonna sit straight down, nice and slow and controlled, lightly tap the target, and then come up. So as you can see, like that knees over toes thing, hopefully will get you ready for doing this, right? Like we wouldn't do this all in one session. This would be like a week or two after that first stage, okay? So knees over toes, light tap, and stand up. What you don't want to do is this, right? Okay, you don't want to plop. You want to keep it really controlled, light tap, and stand back up. Okay, so then once you get comfortable there, we could go over here to a lower target, and then eventually we would lose the target, but that's going to be towards the end. So then second target I'll do is usually this one. So that's 18 inches. This is about 14 to 15. And then same exact thing, but now you're just going a little bit lower. Still have the target there to keep you nice and controlled. Okay, so that'd be step 2, is getting into some actual squat patterns, but just in a controlled manner. And then step 3 that we like to focus on is adding in some single leg strength. So another, like, kind of tying into the whole quad and glute isolation thing that we did in step 1. It's really what it comes down to is weakness, right? And a lot of times what happens is people have weakness in one leg more than the other, right? So basically just one leg is weaker than the other. That's super common. So for a step up, this is one of our favorite single leg strength isolation exercises. I'll go this way so we can kind of see from the side. What you want to do to make this even more focused on one leg is to really focus on pushing your knee forward over your toe, just like we've been doing this whole time, and trying to not use this back leg to like catapult yourself up, okay? So you want to put this front leg up there, shift knee over toe, really think about using this front glute to kind of isolate, and then at the top here, you're going to squeeze this quad and get this opposite knee up to kind of increase the balance and increase the time spent on one leg. Then come all the way down, and you're going to do that again. So shift, all the way up, squeeze the quad, balance, all the way down. Okay, so just getting into some single leg strength here, tying into the fact that like there's probably just some weakness going on that's causing the knee pain. If there is knee pain on both sides, maybe both legs are weak, or maybe there's something else going on, but usually it's only one side that you have the knee pain, at least at first. So then after you get some of that single leg strength, which of course there's a million different ways to do that as well. Step up is just one example of that. Lastly, you want to get into that full squat depth without a target, and then eventually add some weight, right? So then towards the end of treatment, dealing with this knee pain with squatting, you're just going to be getting into some normal squatting, right? So knees out, core engaged, sit straight down into that squat as low as you can, and then come up, right? And then of course, eventually we want to start loading that, really increase that strength. Nothing really changes here, core engaged, feet about shoulder width apart, toes out, knees go out over the toes, get to that depth, and then stand up. Okay, so that's kind of how we would take somebody through some just general knee pain with squatting, covering all those basics, quad, glute isolation, getting your knees over your toes, working into some slow, eccentric squatting to a target, then focusing a lot on strengthening, especially single leg strength, and then finally just getting into that full squat with some weight. So let us know down below if you guys found this helpful. If you have any additional questions about your unique situation, we'd love to help you. You can call, text, email us, comment down below, whatever works for you, and we'll catch you guys in the next video.